Maya Chen adjusted her glasses as she placed the morning coffee on Richard Blackstone's mahogany desk, the steam curling up like her unspoken thoughts. For 8 years, she had been the perfect executive assistant. Punctual, efficient, and completely invisible to the man who ruled Blackstone Tech with an iron fist and an oversized ego. "Maya, get Isabella on the line," Richard barked without looking up from his phone, where he was scrolling through photos of his latest business trip to Monaco. His wedding ring caught the morning light, a cruel reminder of the wife he rarely mentioned and the family he seemed to have forgotten. As Maya dialed the extension, she watched through the glass walls as Isabella Romano strutted through the office in her designer heels and perfectly tailored suit. Isabella had joined the marketing department 2 years ago and had quickly become Richard's right hand, and much more than that, though they thought their affair was a secret. "Richard, darling," Isabella purred as she entered the office, deliberately brushing past Maya as if she were furniture. "I've prepared the presentation for the Morrison account. We should discuss it over dinner tonight." Maya's fingers tightened around her notebook. She had actually prepared that presentation, working late into the night to perfect every slide, every statistic, every compelling argument. But credit, like respect, was something that never reached her desk. "Excellent work, Isabella," Richard smiled, the same charming grin that had once made him a local business magazine's CEO to watch. "Maya, cancel my evening plans with Jennifer. Tell my wife something came up." The casual cruelty in his voice made Maya's stomach turn. Jennifer Blackstone was a kind woman who had called the office several times, hoping to schedule dinner with her increasingly distant husband. Maya had grown to recognize the disappointment in Jennifer's voice with each cancellation. As Isabella leaned over Richard's desk, whispering something that made him laugh, Maya quietly excused herself. In the privacy of her small office adjacent to his, she opened her laptop and logged into her personal investment account. The numbers on the screen told a story that would shock everyone in the gleaming 30-story building. Over the past 8 years, while Richard flaunted his wealth and Isabella climbed the corporate ladder through manipulation, Maya had been quietly and methodically purchasing Blackstone Tech shares. Every bonus, every inheritance dollar from her late grandmother, every saved penny had gone toward one goal: protecting the company she had helped build from the shadows. The account showed 51.2% ownership of Blackstone Tech, all held under her maiden name through a private trust her lawyer had helped establish. Richard Blackstone, the man who treated her like she was invisible, was actually working for her. Maya closed the laptop as footsteps approached. Isabella appeared in her doorway, a predatory smile on her perfectly glossed lips. "Maya, sweetie," Isabella said with fake sweetness. "Richard and I were discussing some changes around here. It might be time for you to explore other opportunities. 8 years is quite long enough in one position, don't you think?" The threat was clear, but Maya simply nodded politely. "I'll consider your suggestion, Ms. Romano." As Isabella walked away, satisfied with what she believed was a conquered enemy, Maya allowed herself a small, knowing smile. Soon, very soon, everyone would discover that the invisible woman had been the most powerful person in the room all along. Isabella Romano had always believed that success was about knowing the right people and being in the right place at the right time. As she sat in Richard's penthouse apartment, sipping champagne while overlooking the city skyline, she felt invincible. The lights below seemed to twinkle just for her, celebrating what she was certain would be her ultimate victory. "Richard, darling," she said, trailing her fingers along his arm, "we need to talk about Maya. She's becoming a liability. Yesterday, I caught her listening outside your office during our investor call." Richard frowned, loosening his tie. "Maya. She's harmless. Been there forever, never causes trouble." "That's exactly the problem," Isabella insisted, her voice taking on a sharper edge. "She knows too much about our operations, our plans. And frankly, having such outdated staff doesn't reflect well on the company's image. We're trying to attract young, dynamic investors." What Isabella didn't mention was her real concern. Maya's quiet competence made Isabella's own contributions seem hollow by comparison. Every presentation Isabella claimed credit for, every client relationship she boasted about maintaining, had Maya's invisible fingerprints all over it. The next morning, Isabella strode into the office with renewed purpose. She had spent weeks cultivating relationships with board members, particularly the older gentlemen who were charmed by her attention and impressed by what they believed was her business acumen. Today, she would make her move. "Maya," Isabella called out, not bothering to knock on the small office door. "Richard wants to see you immediately." Maya looked up from her computer, where she had been reviewing quarterly reports that painted a troubling picture. The company's finances were solid, but Richard had been making suspicious inquiries about liquidating assets and transferring funds to offshore accounts. In Richard's office, the atmosphere felt different, colder, more formal. Richard avoided eye contact as Isabella positioned herself behind his chair like a general preparing for battle. "Maya," Richard began, his voice lacking its usual commanding tone, "after careful consideration, we've decided to restructure your position. We're offering you a generous severance package, 6 months' salary, and excellent references." Isabella stepped forward, her smile predatory. "It's really for the best, Maya. The company is evolving, and we need team members who can grow with us. I'm sure you understand." Maya's heart raced, but not from fear. Through her lawyer's discreet investigations, she had discovered Richard's real plan. He intended to sell Blackstone Tech to a consortium of overseas investors who cared nothing about the company's employees or ethical practices. The sale would make Richard incredibly wealthy while destroying everything the company had built. "I see," Maya said quietly, her hands steady despite the magnitude of what she knew. "And when would this transition take place?" "Immediately," Isabella said, barely containing her glee. "Security will escort you out after you've packed your personal items. We've already arranged for a temporary replacement." Through the glass walls, Maya could see other employees pretending to work while stealing glances at the drama unfolding in the corner office. Some looked sympathetic. Maya had helped many of them over the years, covering their mistakes, staying late to meet their deadlines, and offering quiet encouragement during difficult times. "There's just one small detail we need to address," Richard said, sliding a thick legal document across his desk. "This is a standard non-disclosure agreement. It ensures that any proprietary information you may have encountered during your employment remains confidential." Maya picked up the document, noting the complex legal language designed to silence her permanently about the company's operations. Hidden within the dense paragraphs were clauses that would prevent her from ever working in the tech industry again or speaking about Richard's business practices. Isabella leaned against the desk, her victory seemingly complete. "Sign it, Maya. Don't make this more difficult than it needs to be." As Maya held the pen, she thought about her grandmother, who had taught her that patience was the most powerful weapon a woman could possess. Her grandmother had saved every penny, invested wisely, and built a small fortune that she had left entirely to Maya with one piece of advice: power reveals itself when the time is right, not before. Maya set down the pen and looked directly at Isabella, then at Richard. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. Before I sign anything, perhaps we should call an emergency board meeting. There are some things about this company that I believe the board should know." Isabella's confident smile faltered slightly. "What could you possibly have to tell the board?" Maya stood up, her 8 years of quiet observation finally crystallizing into purpose. "Everything." The boardroom at Blackstone Tech had never felt so charged with tension. Maya sat calmly at the far end of the polished conference table, her simple grey suit a stark contrast to Isabella's bold red power dress and Richard's expensive Italian suit. The 12 board members filed in, their faces reflecting confusion about this hastily called emergency meeting. "Ladies and gentlemen," Richard began, his voice projecting false confidence, "we've gathered to discuss some personnel changes and to finalize our exciting partnership with Pacific Investment Group. As you know, their offer to purchase Blackstone Tech will provide excellent returns for all our shareholders." Board member Margaret Foster, a sharp-eyed woman in her 60s, leaned forward. "Richard, why exactly did Maya request this meeting? She's not typically involved in board discussions." Isabella's laugh was sharp and dismissive. "That's exactly what we're addressing today. Maya has been overstepping her boundaries. We felt it was important to handle this transition professionally, with full board awareness." Maya opened her leather portfolio and withdrew a stack of documents. Her hands were steady, her voice clear as crystal. "Thank you for accommodating my request. I called this meeting because there are facts about this company that the board needs to know before any sale is finalized." She slid copies of the first document around the table. What you're looking at is a complete ownership breakdown of Blackstone Tech. Please pay particular attention to the majority shareholder listing. The room fell silent except for the rustling of papers. One by one, the board members' expressions shifted from confusion to shock. Margaret Foster's eyes widened as she read the name at the top of the shareholder list. Maya Chen. 51.2% ownership. Board member James Wright stammered. This must be some kind of mistake. Richard's face had gone pale. That's impossible. My family built this company. I own the controlling interest. Maya calmly distributed another set of documents. These are the investment records spanning 8 years, showing systematic share purchases made through the Chen Family Trust. Every acquisition was properly documented and filed with the Securities and Exchange Commission. Isabella snatched the papers from the table, her eyes scanning frantically. This is some kind of fraud. There's no way a secretary could afford. Executive assistant, Maya corrected quietly. And you're right, I couldn't have afforded this on my salary alone. However, my grandmother left me a substantial inheritance, which I chose to invest in a company I believed in. The third set of documents hit the table like thunderbolts. These are records of Mr. Blackstone's recent activities, attempts to liquidate company assets, transfer funds to offshore accounts, and sell the company without proper shareholder approval. What he's attempting is not just unethical, it's illegal. Richard shot to his feet, his composed facade finally cracking. You've been spying on me? Going through confidential files? I've been doing my job, Maya replied. The same job I've done faithfully for 8 years while watching you take credit for work you didn't do, ignore employees who needed support, and plan to destroy everything this company stands for. Margaret Foster studied the documents intently. Maya, if this is accurate, you've had controlling interest for, how long? 3 years and 4 months, Maya answered. I chose to remain silent because I believed Mr. Blackstone would eventually remember what this company was supposed to represent. I was wrong. Isabella's voice rose to nearly a shriek. This is insane. Richard, tell them this is some elaborate scheme. But Richard was staring at Maya as if seeing her for the first time. The quiet woman who had arranged his meetings, managed his schedule, and cleaned up his mistakes was actually the person who owned everything he had claimed as his legacy. The sale to Pacific Investment Group is hereby blocked, Maya announced. As majority shareholder, I'm exercising my right to prevent any transaction that would compromise this company's integrity or harm its employees. Board member David Park leaned back in his chair, a slow smile spreading across his face. Maya, I have to ask, why reveal this now? You could have continued operating from the shadows. Maya looked around the table at faces that ranged from shocked to admiring to terrified. Because I realized that hiding the truth wasn't protecting anyone. It was enabling behavior that needed to stop. Isabella gathered her papers with shaking hands, her dreams of corporate power evaporating. This isn't over, she hissed. Actually, Maya said, opening her final folder, it is. These documents show evidence of insider trading, falsified reports, and breach of fiduciary duty. I've already forwarded copies to the appropriate authorities. As security escorted Richard and Isabella from the building, Margaret Foster approached Maya. What happens now? Do you plan to run the company? Maya looked out the conference room windows at the city below, where thousands of people were living their own quiet struggles, making their own invisible contributions to the world. No, she said softly. I plan to make sure it's run by people who understand that real leadership means serving others, not serving yourself. 3 months after the boardroom revelation, Blackstone Tech hummed with an energy that hadn't existed in years. Maya walked through the open office space, no longer invisible but not seeking the spotlight either. Employees who had once barely acknowledged her now smiled genuinely, knowing she had saved their jobs and their company's soul. The transformation had been swift but thoughtful. Maya's first act as revealed majority owner was to promote Margaret Foster to Chief Executive Officer, a woman whose integrity and experience had impressed Maya during years of board meetings. Margaret had gladly accepted, understanding that Maya preferred to guide from behind the scenes rather than claim a corner office. The Hartford account is thriving under the new management structure, Margaret reported during their weekly meeting in Maya's modest office. She had refused Richard's former penthouse suite, choosing instead to remain in her familiar space, now expanded and properly furnished. Client satisfaction is up 30% since we implemented transparent communication policies. Maya nodded, reviewing the quarterly reports that showed remarkable improvement across all metrics. What about the employee wellness program? Fully funded and operational. The mental health support services you insisted on are being utilized more than we expected. Several employees have personally thanked me for listening to their concerns about work-life balance. Through the window, Maya could see the small meditation garden she had created in the previously unused courtyard space. During lunch hours, employees would sit among the carefully chosen plants, some reading, others simply breathing in the peace that had replaced the corporate anxiety of the Richard Blackstone era. The legal consequences had unfolded exactly as Maya had predicted. Richard faced multiple charges: securities fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit corporate theft. The evidence Maya had methodically collected over months proved decisive. His assets were frozen, his reputation destroyed, and his wife Jennifer, who had known nothing of his schemes, had filed for divorce and moved across the country to start fresh. Isabella's downfall had been even more dramatic. Her falsified credentials, plagiarized presentations, and attempts to manipulate board members came to light during the investigation. No reputable company would hire her, and she had left the city in disgrace. Maya felt no satisfaction in Isabella's destruction, only sadness that someone with genuine potential had chosen shortcuts over substance. "There's something else," Margaret said, sliding a newspaper across the desk. The business section headline read, "Local tech company becomes model for ethical corporate leadership." Maya skimmed the article, which praised Blackstone Tech's innovative approach to employee ownership, environmental responsibility, and community engagement. The reporter had interviewed several staff members who spoke glowingly about the company's transformation. "Sarah Martinez wants to thank you personally," Margaret added. Sarah was a junior developer who had been struggling with student loan debt and had feared losing her job during Richard's planned sale. "The tuition assistance program you created is allowing her to finish her master's degree." Maya smiled, remembering her grandmother's words about money being a tool, not a goal. "The company succeeds when its people succeed. That's not revolutionary, it's just common sense." Her phone buzzed with a text message, and Maya's expression softened as she read it. Margaret noticed the change immediately. "That wouldn't be from a certain architect, would it?" Margaret asked with a knowing smile. Maya had met Alex Rivera at a community center where Blackstone Tech was sponsoring a coding workshop for underprivileged teenagers. Alex had been volunteering his time to teach basic construction skills to kids interested in building trades. Their first conversation had lasted 3 hours, covering everything from sustainable design to the importance of creating spaces where people could thrive. "He's asking if I want to grab coffee after work," Maya admitted, feeling slightly embarrassed by her obvious happiness. "Maya, you've revolutionized an entire company and become one of the most respected business leaders in the city. I think you can handle a coffee date," Margaret laughed. That evening, Maya changed from her business attire into comfortable jeans and a soft sweater, clothes that felt like the real her. She had spent so many years being invisible that rediscovering her own preferences felt like meeting a stranger. Alex was waiting outside the small cafe they had discovered together, his warm smile making her heart skip in a way that still surprised her. He wasn't impressed by her wealth or intimidated by her business success. Instead, he seemed fascinated by her thoughts on urban planning, her passion for employee welfare, and her quiet determination to make the world slightly better. "How was the board meeting?" he asked as they found a quiet corner table. "Productive. We approved the scholarship fund for employees' children and the partnership with the environmental cleanup project you recommended." Alex's eyes lit up. "The riverfront restoration? Maya, that's going to impact hundreds of families in the area. The green spaces we're designing will serve the community for generations." As they talked, Maya realized this was what she had been searching for without knowing it. Someone who saw problems as opportunities to help, who measured success by positive impact rather than personal gain. Alex's modest apartment was filled with books on sustainable architecture and photos from volunteer trips to build schools in underserved communities. "I have something to tell you," Maya said, feeling nervous despite their months of growing closeness. "You're secretly a superhero." Alex grinned. "Because honestly, turning around that company the way you did was pretty heroic." Maya laughed, the sound free and genuine. No cape required. Just patience, planning, and the right moment to act. As the evening deepened around them, Maya reflected on how completely her life had changed. She had found her voice, claimed her power, and discovered that the greatest victory wasn't defeating Richard and Isabella, it was building something better in their place. 6 months later, Maya stood in the community garden that Alex had designed in partnership with Blackstone Tech's corporate social responsibility program. The morning sun filtered through the fruit trees they had planted together, casting gentle shadows on the raised beds where neighborhood families grew vegetables and children learned about sustainability. "The tomatoes are coming in beautifully," Alex said, appearing beside her with 2 cups of coffee and that smile that still made her pulse quicken. He wore work clothes stained with honest dirt, having spent the morning helping elderly residents tend their plots. Maya accepted the coffee gratefully, her simple engagement ring catching the light. The proposal had happened here in this garden 3 weeks ago, with Alex kneeling among the sunflowers while neighborhood kids cheered in the background. It was perfect, unpretentious, meaningful, and surrounded by the community they had both grown to love. "Margaret called this morning," Maya said, settling onto the wooden bench Alex had built overlooking the central fountain. "Blackstone Tech has been selected as one of the nation's top ethical employers. We're apparently inspiring other companies to adopt similar employee ownership models. And how do you feel about being held up as a business revolutionary?" Alex teased, though his pride in her accomplishments was evident. Maya considered the question seriously. A year ago, she would have been terrified of such attention. Now, she understood that visibility could be a tool for positive change, just like the wealth she had carefully accumulated. "Grateful," she said finally. "If our story helps other people find the courage to speak up when they see something wrong, then maybe those 8 years of being invisible were preparation for this moment." The sound of children's laughter drew their attention to the playground section of the garden, where several families were enjoying the Saturday morning sunshine. Maya recognized some of the children from the coding workshops Blackstone Tech sponsored, bright minds who might never have had access to technology education without the program. "There's something I want to show you," Alex said, pulling out his tablet. The screen displayed architectural drawings for an ambitious project, a mixed-use development that combined affordable housing, community spaces, and small business incubators. "The city approved our proposal," he continued, his excitement barely contained. "We can break ground next spring. The first phase will house 30 families, and the commercial spaces are already committed to local entrepreneurs." Maya studied the designs, seeing Alex's passion for creating spaces where people could thrive. The buildings were beautiful but practical, incorporating sustainable materials and energy-efficient systems that would keep costs low for residents. "It's perfect," she said, meaning it completely. "But the funding is already secured," Alex grinned. "Anonymous donor. Someone who believes in investing in communities rather than just profits." Maya tried to look innocent, but Alex knew her too well by now. "Maya Chen, you're supposed to discuss major financial decisions with your future husband." "It's not that major," she protested. "Besides, you'd have said no if I asked first. You're too proud to accept help, even when it's for a good cause." Alex pulled her closer, his kiss tasting of morning coffee and shared dreams. "I love that you see problems and immediately start solving them. But I also love that you're learning to let other people take care of you too." It was true. Maya had spent so many years being self-sufficient that accepting love, real, unconditional love, had been harder than taking control of a corporation. Alex's patient affection had taught her that vulnerability could be a strength rather than a weakness. "Speaking of letting people take care of me," Maya said, "Margaret insists on planning our wedding reception. She claims it's the least the company can do after I single-handedly prevented corporate disaster and restored faith in ethical business practices." "Margaret has a flair for drama," Alex laughed. "But she's not wrong. You did save a lot of people's livelihoods." Maya watched a young mother teaching her daughter to plant seeds in one of the garden beds. The little girl's concentration was absolute as she carefully patted soil around a tiny seedling, her face bright with the possibility of growth and harvest. I used to think power meant being able to control outcomes, Maya mused. Now I think it means creating conditions where good things can grow naturally. Alex squeezed her hand. Your grandmother would be proud of how you used her gift. I hope so. She always said that money was like seeds, worthless unless you plant them in good soil. Maya paused, thinking of the woman who had shaped her values. I think she'd approve of the harvest. As they walked home through streets lined with trees Alex had helped plant and past businesses that employed people Maya's programs had trained, Maya felt a deep sense of completion. She had learned that true victory wasn't about defeating enemies. It was about building something so positive and strong that darkness couldn't take root. That evening, as they sat on Alex's small balcony overlooking the city, Maya reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From invisible assistant to corporate owner to community leader to beloved partner, each role had taught her something essential about courage, integrity, and the quiet power of doing right when no one is watching. What are you thinking about? Alex asked, noticing her contemplative mood. Maya smiled, looking out at the lights of the city where thousands of people were living their own stories of struggle and triumph, love and loss, dreams planted and harvests gathered. I'm thinking that sometimes the best stories are the ones that begin with everyone thought she was invisible, Maya said, and end with but she was there all along, building something beautiful in the shadows. Alex raised his coffee mug in a gentle toast. To building beautiful things in the shadows. To bringing them into the light when the time is right, Maya replied, clinking her mug against his as the stars emerged overhead, witnessing another quiet victory in a city full of untold stories. Life lesson: the greatest transformations often happen quietly, through consistent acts of integrity and love. True fulfillment comes not from defeating others, but from building something meaningful that outlasts any individual victory or defeat.